Homeless girl helped starving elder. Unaware the man watching behind was a CEO who changed her life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's incredible story. Imagine a homeless girl struggling to survive on the streets, offering a simple act of kindness to an elderly man who's starving. Little did she know, the man watching her from behind was no ordinary person. He was a CEO, and what happened next would change her life forever. Stay with us to find out how one small act of kindness can turn into a life-changing opportunity. Let's go back to our main character. The wind cut through the cold streets of New York City, biting at the exposed skin of anyone brave enough to be outside. It was one of those frigid nights that made the world seem a little darker, a little lonelier. Emma, bundled up in a worn-out jacket, stepped carefully onto the sidewalk, clutching a half-empty coffee cup for warmth. She had been living on the streets for weeks now. Each day felt like an uphill battle, trying to get by with whatever odd jobs she could find. But tonight, she wasn't thinking about survival. She was thinking about helping someone else. She spotted him from a distance, a man hunched over on the steps of a rundown building, his hands shaking as he tried to pull his coat tighter against the cold. His face was pale, eyes sunken. Clearly a man who had been through more than his fair share of hardships. Emma felt a tug in her chest. It didn't matter that she had nothing left to give. She couldn't just walk past him. With a sigh, she approached. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, trying to hide the trembling in her voice. "Are you all right?" The man looked up at her, startled, his eyes scanning her face before nodding weakly. I'm fine. Just a bit hungry." Emma hesitated, pulling her own last few dollars from her coat pocket. She had just enough for a small meal, but it didn't matter right now. The man needed it more. "Here," she said, offering him the few dollars she had. "It's not much, but it's something." He looked at the money in her hand, then back at her, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice raspy. But Emma shook her head, determined. "I know, but I want to." Without saying anything else, she handed him the money, watching as his fingers closed around it. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. He gave her a small, grateful smile before tucking the money into his coat pocket. Emma turned to leave, her heart aching at the thought of him sitting there alone in the cold. But as she started to walk away, something stopped her. She glanced back over her shoulder, and for a split second, she thought she saw him watching her, really watching her, with eyes that seemed to carry a weight of their own. She quickly turned away and hurried off into the night, her footsteps quickening. As Emma disappeared into the darkness, she didn't know that the man she had just helped wasn't just an ordinary stranger. He was someone who would change her life forever. What she didn't know was that he wasn't just a homeless man at all. He was the CEO of a massive tech company, a man who had been following her story from afar, impressed by her kindness despite her own struggles. And now, her life was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. But for now, she kept walking, lost in her thoughts, unaware that fate was about to step in and change everything. Emma walked through the cold streets, her breath visible in the frigid air, her coat barely enough to keep her warm. It had been a few days since she had helped the elderly man, and life had not been kind to her since. The small amount of money she had left was nearly gone, and her hunger was starting to make her dizzy. Yet, despite everything, she couldn't shake the image of his grateful face. She found herself thinking about him more than she expected to, wondering if he had been all right after she left. But what could she do? She was barely managing to survive herself. As she walked toward the alley where she usually slept, she felt a deep sense of loneliness wash over her. She missed the days when she had a home, a family, and a sense of security. Now, everything felt so uncertain. She could hear the distant sounds of traffic, but the streets felt so empty. No one seemed to care about the people struggling like her. It was as if the world had moved on, and she was just left behind. The next morning, Emma was at the local soup kitchen, sitting in the corner, trying to eat something warm. Her stomach ached from hunger, and she could feel the cold creeping into her bones. As she picked at her food, she heard a familiar voice. Excuse me, are you Emma? She looked up, startled, and saw the elderly man from the night she had helped him. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized him, but she didn't know what to say. He smiled warmly at her. I hope you remember me. I'm Grant Carter. She blinked, trying to process what was happening. Grant Carter? The name didn't ring any bells, but there was something about the way he spoke that made her pause. You're the man I helped a few days ago? She asked hesitantly. He nodded, still smiling. Yes, that's me. And I wanted to thank you again for your kindness. I didn't forget it. Emma felt her cheeks flush, and she looked down at her food, unsure of how to respond. He sat down across from her, the warm glow from the kitchen lights softening his features. I know it wasn't much, but your generosity really meant a lot to me. Emma didn't know how to react. She had only given him a few dollars, but to him, it seemed to have made all the difference. The room felt a little warmer now, and Emma couldn't help but smile at him. She didn't know why, but something about him felt different. He wasn't like the other people she had met on the streets. He seemed genuine. I don't have much to give, she said softly. But I couldn't just leave you there. Grant nodded, his eyes softening. I understand. And that's why I wanted to find you. I've been thinking about what you did for me, and I want to offer you something in return. Emma blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. Offer me something? What do you mean? He hesitated for a moment, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. I run a foundation. We help people in need, just like you. And I want to offer you a job, Emma. A chance to turn your life around. Emma stared at him, her mind racing. A job? With him? She had never imagined something like this could happen. I don't know what to say, she stammered, unsure of how to process this sudden turn of events. I know it's a lot to take in, he said gently. But I believe you deserve a chance. You've shown kindness when you had nothing to give, and that's something rare. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She had always dreamed of a better life, of having a stable job and a future where she didn't have to worry about where her next meal was coming from. But could she really trust him? She didn't even know who he was. She looked at the business card in her hand, the words, Grant Carter, CEO of Carter Foundation, printed clearly on it. You're a CEO? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. Yes, I am. And I want to help you. We have an opening at the foundation, and I think you could be a perfect fit. Emma didn't know what to say. She had never imagined something like this happening to her. A job offer from a CEO? It sounded too good to be true. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw no hint of trickery or deceit. There was something about him that made her believe he was genuine. After a long pause, she finally spoke. I don't know if I'm ready for this, but maybe I'll give it a try. Grant smiled, his eyes lighting up. That's all I ask. Just give it a chance. Emma felt a mix of emotions swirl inside her. Fear, excitement, disbelief. But one thing was certain. Her life was about to change, and she wasn't sure what that meant yet. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she might have a chance at something better. Emma stood in front of the large building, the wind biting at her face as she clutched the business card Grant had given her. It felt like a dream, something too good to be true, and yet here she was, standing outside the Carter Foundation, wondering if she was making the right choice. She had never imagined that a simple act of kindness would lead her here. The thought of working for a CEO, let alone someone as successful as Grant, was overwhelming. She had always been a survivor, doing whatever it took to get by. But this felt like something entirely different. She took a deep breath and walked toward the entrance, the sound of her footsteps echoing on the marble floor as she pushed open the heavy glass doors. Inside, the building was sleek and modern, with polished floors and high ceilings. It felt worlds away from the streets she had called home for so long. As she approached the front desk, a woman greeted her with a warm smile. You must be Emma. Grant is expecting you. Emma nodded, her heart racing. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she followed the woman down the hallway to a spacious office with a large window overlooking the city. Grant stood by the window, his back to her as he gazed out at the skyline. Emma, welcome, he said, turning to face her. His smile was kind, but there was something about him that made her nervous. Thank you for coming. I know this is a big step, but I believe in you. Emma wasn't sure how to respond. She had never been in a position like this before, where someone believed in her so strongly. It was both humbling and terrifying. I'm just not sure if I'm cut out for this, she admitted, her voice wavering. I've never done anything like this. I'm used to surviving on my own. Grant stepped forward, his gaze steady and reassuring. I understand. But that's what makes you so special, Emma. You have a strength that most people don't. You've had to fight for everything you have, and that's something we need here. We need people who understand what it means to struggle, to fight for a better life. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She had spent so many years just trying to survive, just trying to make it through another day. The idea of thriving, of having a future where she wasn't constantly looking over her shoulder, seemed impossible. I don't know if I can do this, she said quietly. I'm scared. Grant smiled softly, his expression warm and understanding. It's okay to be scared. But that's why we're here. To help you. To support you. This is just the beginning, Emma. You don't have to do it alone. Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away, embarrassed by her own vulnerability. She had spent so long building walls around herself that letting someone in felt foreign, almost wrong. But here, in this moment, with Grant's steady presence and his belief in her, she felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for her to start over. Over the next few days, Emma found herself adjusting to this new life. The work was challenging, but it was rewarding. She was given tasks that made her think, that forced her to push herself in ways she hadn't before. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was part of something bigger, something that mattered. But the road ahead was not without its obstacles. Emma still carried the weight of her past with her, the fear of failure, the doubts that nagged at her every step. She would sometimes catch herself looking at the other employees, wondering if they saw her as an outsider, if they knew the truth about where she had come from. But whenever she felt that familiar sense of insecurity creeping in, she would think back to Grant's words. Asterisk, you've had to fight for everything you have. Asterisk, that was what set her apart. She wasn't just some girl off the streets anymore. She was someone who had the strength to rise above her circumstances. As the weeks passed, Emma began to grow more confident in her role. She started to connect with the other staff, and they began to see her for what she truly was, a hard worker, a compassionate person, someone who had a lot to offer. The work she was doing at the foundation was making a difference, and with each passing day, she felt a little more like she belonged. One afternoon, Grant called her into his office. Emma, I've been watching you, he said with a smile. You're doing an excellent job. I think you're ready for more responsibility. Emma's heart raced. Was this really happening? Was she really being recognized for her work? I'm ready, she asked, her voice shaking with excitement. Grant nodded. Yes, you're ready. I want you to take on a project of your own, something that will really show what you can do. Emma's mind was spinning. She had come so far, and now, she was being trusted with more. The possibilities felt endless. She left his office that day with a new sense of purpose, knowing that her life had changed forever. The girl who once wandered the streets with nothing was now part of something that mattered, and with each step she took, she felt closer to the future she had always dreamed of. Emma sat at her desk, staring at the pile of papers in front of her. It had been weeks since she started working at the Carter Foundation, and every day brought new challenges, new responsibilities, and new fears. She could feel the weight of the project Grant had assigned to her pressing down on her. It wasn't just any project. It was a chance to prove herself, to show that she was more than just a girl who had once lived on the streets. Her mind raced as she reviewed the details of the task, organizing a charity event to raise funds for homeless shelters. It was a cause close to her heart, but it was also a massive undertaking, and the stakes were high. She had never done anything like this before, and the pressure to succeed was almost overwhelming. But as she sat there, she remembered what Grant had said to her when he gave her the project. Asterisk, I believe in you, Emma. You have what it takes to make this work. Asterisk, she took a deep breath and stood up, shaking off the doubts that tried to creep in. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let fear hold her back. She had come too far. As the days went by, Emma threw herself into the project, working late nights and long hours to ensure everything was perfect. She contacted sponsors, reached out to potential donors, and coordinated with the event planners. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when she felt like she was in over her head, but every time she felt like giving up, she thought about the people who would benefit from this event. She thought about the homeless people she used to see on the streets, and she reminded herself why she was doing this. She had come from nothing, and now she had a chance to make a real difference. One afternoon, While she was busy preparing for the event, Grant walked into her office. "How's everything going?" he asked, his voice calm but full of concern. Emma looked up from her work, her eyes tired but determined. "It's going well. It's a lot of work, but I think we're on track," she replied, trying to sound confident. Grant nodded, walking over to her desk. "I know you're doing your best, but remember, you don't have to do everything alone. You have a team here, and we all want to see you succeed." Emma smiled, grateful for his support. "Thanks, Grant. I'll keep that in mind." He smiled back, giving her a reassuring pat on the shoulder before walking out of the room. His words stayed with her as she continued to work. She had never really been part of a team before, never had people who believed in her. But now, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself, and that made all the difference. As the date of the event drew closer, Emma felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. She couldn't believe how far she had come. She had gone from a homeless girl on the streets to the organizer of a major charity event. It was almost surreal, but it was happening. On the night of the event, Emma stood in the grand hall, watching as guests arrived in their elegant outfits, the soft glow of chandeliers illuminating the space. She couldn't help but feel a wave of pride wash over her. This was her event, her hard work, and it was all coming together. People were talking, laughing, and donating generously to the cause. The energy in the room was electric, and Emma felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. As the night went on, she found herself standing near the stage, watching the speeches being given by some of the donors. She looked around the room, taking in the faces of the people who had come to support the cause. She had done this. She had helped make this happen. The realization hit her like a wave, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly proud of herself. After the event, Grant approached her, a smile on his face. "You did it, Emma. You made it happen," he said, his voice full of pride. Emma couldn't help but smile back, feeling a sense of accomplishment swell in her chest. "I couldn't have done it without your support," she replied. Grant shook his head. "You did it, Emma. You showed everyone what you're capable of." Emma felt a warmth spread through her as she realized how much she had changed in such a short time. She had gone from someone who had nothing to someone who was making a real impact on the world. She had proved to herself that she was capable of more than she ever imagined. As the night came to an end, Emma stood by the door, watching the last guests leave. She felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. This was just the beginning of her journey, and she was ready for whatever came next. The girl who had once been lost in the streets had found her place in the world, and now, she had a future she could believe in. The weeks that followed the charity event were some of the most transformative of Emma's life. She felt more alive than ever, filled with a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Each day at the Carter Foundation was a new opportunity to grow, and the project she had led had opened up doors she never imagined possible. She was no longer just a girl who had struggled to survive on the streets. She was a part of something much bigger now. People at the foundation began to notice her dedication, and more opportunities began to come her way. One afternoon, Grant called her into his office again. He was sitting behind his desk, looking over some papers, but he smiled when she entered. "Emma, come on in. I have something I want to discuss with you," he said, motioning for her to take a seat. Emma's heart skipped a beat. It had been a while since they had spoken in person, and she wondered what this meeting was about. "You've been doing exceptional work, and I think it's time for you to take on a new role," Grant continued, his voice steady. Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. A new role? She hadn't expected anything like this, not so soon. "I've been watching you, Emma," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "You're ready for more responsibility. The foundation is expanding, and I want you to be a part of that growth." Emma's mind was racing. More responsibility? She hadn't been with the foundation for that long, and the idea of stepping into a bigger role felt daunting. But as she looked at Grant, she realized that she had come a long way since the night she first helped him. She had changed, and so had her life. "What kind of role are you talking about?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. Grant smiled, sensing her uncertainty. "I want you to head a new initiative we're launching. A program that will provide job training and resources for homeless individuals who want to rebuild their lives. You'll be leading a team, organizing programs, and making sure everything runs smoothly." Emma's heart raced. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was everything she had ever wanted to do, and now she had the chance to help others who were in the same position she had once been in. That sounds amazing, she said, her voice filled with emotion. Grant nodded. I know it's a big responsibility, but I believe in you. You have the passion and the drive to make this work. You've already proven yourself. Emma sat there for a moment, absorbing his words. She had spent so much of her life fighting just to survive, never imagining that she would be in a position to help others. But now, it felt like everything was coming full circle. She had the power to make a difference, not just for herself, but for people who needed her. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady now. I'm ready. Grant smiled warmly. I knew you would be. I'm excited to see what you'll accomplish. Over the next few months, Emma threw herself into the new role. The work was challenging, but it was also incredibly rewarding. She led the new initiative with the same passion she had brought to every project at the foundation. She worked tirelessly to connect with organizations, secure funding, and build a network of support for the individuals who would benefit from the program. The more she worked, the more confident she became. She saw firsthand how her efforts were changing lives, and that made everything worth it. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings and phone calls, Emma sat in her office, looking out the window at the city below. She couldn't believe how far she had come. Just a year ago, she had been wandering the streets, unsure of where her next meal would come from. Now, she was leading a program that was changing the lives of people who were once in her shoes. It was hard to even wrap her mind around it. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. She picked it up, and to her surprise, it was a message from Grant. Emma, come to my office when you get a chance. I need to talk to you about something. Emma felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had no idea what this was about, but she had learned to trust Grant and his judgment. She stood up from her desk and walked down the hallway to his office. When she entered, he was sitting behind his desk, a thoughtful look on his face. Emma, I wanted to talk to you about something personal, Grant said, his voice softer than usual. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wondered what this was about. Of course, she said, sitting down across from him. What's on your mind? Grant looked at her for a moment before speaking. I've been thinking a lot about everything you've done here, and I just wanted to say how proud I am of you. You've exceeded all expectations, and you've really made a difference. But I also wanted you to know that I think you deserve more than just a job here. You deserve a future, a chance at everything you've ever wanted. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. Was he saying what she thought he was saying? She tried to keep her composure, but her emotions were starting to get the best of her. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You've already given me so much. Grant smiled gently. It's not about giving you something you haven't earned, Emma. It's about seeing your potential and wanting to help you get there. I believe in you, and I want to see you succeed, not just in this job, but in everything you do. Emma felt a wave of gratitude and emotion wash over her. She had spent so many years doubting herself, believing she wasn't worthy of anything better. But now, with Grant's support, she was starting to believe in herself. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for everything. As the months went by, Emma's life continued to change in ways she could never have imagined. She had grown into her role at the Carter Foundation, and each day brought new challenges and new victories. The job training program she was leading had begun to take off, and the lives of many people who had been struggling on the streets were starting to improve. Emma saw their faces light up as they learned new skills, found jobs, and began to rebuild their lives. And with each success, her own sense of purpose grew stronger. The work was hard, and there were days when she felt exhausted, both physically and emotionally. But every time she saw the impact she was making, it reminded her why she was doing it. She had found something meaningful, something that went beyond survival, something that gave her a reason to wake up every morning with hope. But despite her growing confidence and success, there were moments when doubt crept in. She was still haunted by the memories of her past, the time she had struggled on the streets, wondering if she would ever have a real future. It was hard to shake the feeling that she didn't deserve all of this, that it was just a fluke, something that might slip away at any moment. One afternoon, as she sat in her office going over some reports, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Grant. Emma, I need to see you in my office when you have a moment. Her heart skipped a beat. She had become so accustomed to the work at the foundation that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to feel nervous about a meeting with Grant. But something about the tone of his message made her feel uneasy. She stood up from her desk and walked down the hallway, trying to shake the feeling of anxiety building up inside her. When she entered his office, Grant looked up from the papers he was reviewing and smiled. "Come in, Emma. I wanted to talk to you about something important." Emma took a seat across from him, her mind racing. What was this about? Was it about her work? Or something else? "I've been thinking about how far you've come," Grant began, his voice steady. "You've done an incredible job leading the job training program, and the foundation is growing because of your efforts. But I also know that you've had to fight for everything you have, and that's not something you can just leave behind." Emma felt her chest tighten at his words. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and she was terrified that her past would somehow catch up with her, that the person she had been before would come crashing into the life she had built. Grant continued, his gaze kind but firm. "I want you to know that I see you for who you are, Emma. Not just the woman who's leading this project, but the person you've become. You've earned your place here, and I want to help you go further." Emma blinked, her throat suddenly dry. She hadn't expected him to say this, to offer her more. She had never been given opportunities like this before, and she wasn't sure she was ready for them. "I don't know if I can handle more responsibility," she admitted quietly, her voice shaky. "I've come so far, but sometimes I feel like I'm just waiting for everything to fall apart." Grant leaned forward, his expression softening. "I know how you feel, but you have to trust yourself. You're not the same person you were when I first met you. You've grown, and you've proven yourself time and time again. Now, I want to see you take the next step. You don't have to do this alone." Emma looked down at her hands, feeling the weight of his words settle deep in her chest. Could she really do this? Could she face the future with the same courage she had shown so far? Grant continued, his voice gentle but resolute. "I've been thinking about offering you a leadership position within the foundation. Something that would give you more influence, more resources to help even more people. You would have the chance to shape the direction of the foundation and create programs that make a lasting impact on those who need it most." The room seemed to go quiet for a moment, and Emma's mind raced as she processed what he was saying. A leadership position? More responsibility? The fear that had been gnawing at her for so long began to bubble up again. But this time, she pushed it aside. She had worked too hard to let fear hold her back. "I don't know what to say," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is a lot, but I want to help. I want to do more." Grant smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "I knew you'd say that. You're ready, Emma. I have no doubt about that." For the first time in a long while, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had come so far, and now, she was ready for the next chapter. The girl who had once wandered the streets, unsure of where her next meal would come from, was now standing at the threshold of a future she had never imagined possible. She had fought for everything she had, and now, she was about to step into a new role, one that would allow her to make an even greater difference. It was time to embrace the future, to believe in herself the way Grant believed in her. And for the first time, Emma felt ready to take that leap. As the weeks went by, Emma settled into her new leadership role at the Carter Foundation. The weight of responsibility was still there, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a challenge she was ready to take on. She worked tirelessly, building new programs and refining the existing ones. Every day, she could see the impact of her efforts. People's lives were changing, and she was at the center of it all. However, despite the outward success, Emma found herself struggling with something she hadn't expected: doubt. It wasn't doubt about her work or the foundation's mission, but doubt about herself. Every time she looked around, she saw how far she had come from the girl she used to be. She had worked her way up from nothing, but the nagging voice in her head asked, "Do you really belong here?" It wasn't just the doubt that plagued her, it was also the pressure. She had built something meaningful at the foundation, but she was starting to feel like she couldn't keep up with the expectations that had been set for her. There were days when she felt like she was pretending, like she wasn't as qualified as everyone else thought, but she couldn't afford to let anyone see that. One afternoon, as she sat in her office, staring at the pile of emails that had accumulated, she felt the weight of it all pressing down on her. She had just finished a meeting with the team, discussing a new initiative that was set to launch next month, but her mind was elsewhere. The pressure was building, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep up the facade. She was so caught up in her thoughts that she didn't hear the knock at her door. Startled, she looked up to find Grant standing in the doorway, his warm smile immediately putting her at ease. "Emma, do you have a moment?" he asked, stepping inside. She nodded, trying to push the anxiety out of her mind. Of course, Grant. What's up? Grant sat down across from her, his expression thoughtful. I've been meaning to check in with you, he began. How are you doing? Really doing? Emma's heart skipped a beat. How could she explain what she was feeling without sounding ungrateful? She didn't want to seem weak or incapable, especially not to Grant. He had believed in her from the start. I'm doing fine, she said, forcing a smile. Just a little overwhelmed with everything, but I'm managing. Grant studied her for a moment, his eyes searching hers. You know, Emma, it's okay to admit when you're feeling overwhelmed. You've taken on a lot, and I've seen the incredible work you're doing here, but I also see the stress that you're carrying. Don't try to do it all alone. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. The words she had been too afraid to say were now out in the open. She had been trying so hard to keep everything together, to be the perfect leader, the perfect employee, that she had forgotten to take care of herself. I don't want to let anyone down, she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. I don't want to fail. I've worked so hard to get here, and sometimes I feel like I'm not good enough. Grant's expression softened, and he leaned forward slightly. Emma, you're doing an incredible job. You're more than good enough. You're exactly where you need to be. But that doesn't mean you have to carry everything on your shoulders. You have a team here. You have people who care about you, who want to help you. You're not in this alone. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep inside her, and for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she could breathe. The pressure, the weight, it all felt a little lighter. She realized that she didn't have to carry it all herself. She could trust others, lean on her team, and ask for help when she needed it. As Grant stood to leave, he gave her a reassuring smile. You've got this, Emma. You just need to believe in yourself the way we all believe in you. Emma nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Grant. I'll keep that in mind. As the door closed behind him, Emma sat back in her chair, allowing herself a moment of peace. She had come so far, further than she ever thought possible, and now, she was learning that it was okay to ask for help. She didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to do everything on her own. The journey ahead was still filled with challenges, but now, she felt ready to face them. She wasn't just a girl who had once been homeless. She was a leader, a person who had the strength to rise above her past, and she knew that she had the support to keep going. With a renewed sense of purpose, Emma turned her attention back to her work, ready to take on whatever came next. The foundation was thriving, and so was she. As the months passed, Emma found herself in a rhythm at the Carter Foundation. She had settled into her role as a leader, and while the work continued to be demanding, it no longer felt overwhelming. She had learned how to balance her responsibilities and how to lean on the team around her. Every day, she was reminded of how far she had come. From the girl who had once struggled to make it through each day on the streets to the woman leading a foundation that was changing lives, it all still felt surreal. The program she had built had grown exponentially, and the impact was undeniable. People were finding jobs, starting fresh, and rebuilding their lives, and Emma felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing she had a hand in their transformation. It was everything she had hoped for, everything she had worked so hard to create. But even as she thrived in her professional life, there were moments when Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She had gained so much, respect, a career, a sense of purpose, but she had also distanced herself from the one thing she had always wanted, a real connection. She had been so focused on her work, on proving herself, that she had neglected to nurture relationships with those around her. It wasn't that she didn't care about her colleagues, she did. But as time went on, she realized she hadn't made the time to truly connect with anyone outside of work. She was still carrying the weight of her past alone. One afternoon, as she walked through the office, she bumped into Grant. He looked at her with his usual warm smile, but there was something different in his eyes, concern. Emma, he said gently, I've been meaning to ask you how you're really doing. I know you've been working harder than ever, and I've seen the incredible progress we've made, but I also know that you're a person, not just a machine. How are you? Emma hesitated for a moment, caught off guard. She had been so focused on making everything work, on keeping up with the demands of her position, that she hadn't stopped to think about how she was feeling. I'm fine, she said quickly, but even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Grant seemed to see through her, and his next words confirmed it. It's okay to admit that you're not always fine, Emma. You've been carrying a lot on your shoulders. You can't do everything alone. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She had heard those words from him before, but this time, they hit differently. She had always prided herself on her independence, on her ability to handle things on her own, but the truth was, she was starting to realize that she didn't want to do it alone anymore. She wanted to share her struggles, her hopes, her dreams with someone who understood. But it wasn't just about work. She had spent so many years keeping herself closed off from others, afraid that if she let someone in, they might see her as weak, or worse, unworthy. She had carried that fear with her for so long, and now, it felt like it was finally catching up with her. I don't know how to stop, she admitted, her voice shaky. I've spent so much time trying to prove myself, trying to build something that matters, that I've forgotten how to connect with people. I don't know if I even know how anymore. Grant's expression softened, and he reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. It's okay, Emma, he said gently. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, especially not to yourself. You've already done more than most people could ever imagine. But you deserve to be happy, too. You deserve to let others in, to lean on them when you need to. Emma looked at him, feeling the weight of his words sink in. For so long, she had been running on her own, never allowing herself to be vulnerable. But now, sitting here with Grant, she realized that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was strength. It was the ability to admit that you needed help, that you weren't alone. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. Grant smiled, his eyes full of understanding. Anytime, Emma. You've come so far, and I know you're capable of so much more. But remember, you don't have to do it all alone. You have people who care about you. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had spent so much of her life afraid of being seen as weak, but now she understood that true strength came from embracing her humanity, from allowing herself to connect with others. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a part of something bigger, a team, a community, and she wasn't alone. As Emma left the office that day, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she was no longer afraid to walk it. She knew now that she had the strength to face whatever came her way, and with the support of those around her, she could achieve more than she had ever dreamed. She wasn't just building a future for herself, she was building a future for others, one step at a time. As Emma walked through the halls of the Carter Foundation, she felt a sense of peace that she hadn't known in years. It was a calm she had fought for, a calm that had come not just from her accomplishments, but from learning to embrace herself, imperfections and all. The work was still demanding, and there would always be challenges to face, but she had learned that she didn't need to carry the weight alone. She could trust the people around her and lean on them when things got tough. She had learned to ask for help, and more importantly, to give herself permission to be vulnerable. The foundation had become more than just a place of work. It had become a family, a place where she felt supported and understood. She had come so far from the girl who had once been lost on the streets, unsure of where her next meal would come from. She had worked hard to create a new life, and now, she was leading a program that was changing the lives of others in the same way hers had been changed. She could see the faces of the people whose lives she had touched, people who had once been homeless, struggling to find their way, now standing tall with new opportunities and fresh starts. It was a feeling of fulfillment that went beyond anything she had imagined. But as much as she had grown professionally, Emma knew that she still had a lot of work to do. She had learned that success was not just about achieving goals or reaching the top. It was about the journey, the people you met along the way, and the impact you had on others. She had learned that there was no one perfect path to follow, no one way to be. Life was about embracing the ups and downs, learning from every experience, and continuing to move forward, one step at a time. Later that week, Emma found herself in Grant's office once again. He had been more than just a mentor to her. He had become a friend, someone who believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. He looked up from his desk and smiled warmly as she entered. Emma, he said, I wanted to talk to you about something. Emma sat down, feeling a mix of excitement and curiosity. What's on your mind, Grant? She asked. Grant leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. You've done incredible things here, and I can see the impact you've had. But I also think there's something more for you. I've been thinking a lot about your future, and I believe it's time for you to take the next step. Emma's heart raced, unsure of what he meant. She had already been given so many opportunities, but this felt different. What do you mean? She asked, her voice a little shakier than she had intended. Grant smiled, his eyes full of pride. I want to offer you a bigger role, one that will take you outside of the foundation and allow you to create change on a larger scale. I think you're ready to move beyond this, beyond the programs we've built here, and reach more people, make an even greater impact. What do you think? Emma sat in stunned silence for a moment, her mind reeling. She had been so focused on the present, on the work she was doing at the foundation, that the idea of expanding her reach never crossed her mind. But as Grant's words sank in, she realized that he was right. She was ready to push beyond the limits she had once placed on herself, ready to reach even more people, to help even more lives. She thought back to the girl she had once been, to the days when she had no hope, no direction, and no idea how to move forward. She had come so far since then, and now, she was on the brink of something even bigger. I'm ready, Emma said, her voice strong and sure. I'll do it. I'll take the next step. Grant's smile widened, and he stood up to shake her hand. I knew you would, he said. I'm excited to see where you'll go from here, Emma. Emma felt a rush of excitement and anticipation flood through her. She was ready to take on whatever came next. She had learned to believe in herself, to trust in her abilities, and to know that her journey wasn't just about reaching her destination. It was about making a difference along the way. As she walked out of Grant's office, she knew that her story was far from over. She had come so far, but there was still so much more to do. The future was waiting for her, and she was ready to take it on. The girl who had once felt lost had found her place in the world, and now, she was going to help others find theirs. Emma's story wasn't just about survival. It was about transformation. It was about rising above the challenges, embracing the unknown, and becoming the person she had always been meant to be.